He always says, sure.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us on the Monday, January 27th meeting for the African Burial Ground Memorial Park Committee. If we just want to go around and state your name for the roll call, we will start counterclockwise.
Okay, Joyce Patterson. Sue Sterry.
Corin Hollowell, Parks and Greenery Forum.
Daria Steele, Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire.
Suzanne Woodland, Deputy City Manager.
And then on Zoom,
Jerry Ann Bogus, Black Heritage Trail.
perfect. And I am Assistant Mayor Joanna Kelly. I would look, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting in November? Perfect. If there is no motion for any changes, I would look for a motion to approve the draft minutes.
I'll motion to approve what month? November's
November 18th.
committee meeting minutes.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jerry-Ann, is that the affirmative?
Aye.
Okay, just want to make sure. Perfect. And then I will pass it over for our third item, which is an update on the anticipated maintenance activities for 2025.
All right, I'll jump right in. So I've got a quote from Daedalus Conservation for re-waxing the bronze sculptures, repainting the ribbon, all the letters, repainting the letters on the, I guess that's Court Street side. Also putting a new finish on the pedestal, and then recoating the bronze figure, the metal figures.
Yes.
I've got the approval from the director to move forward with that. So that work will be happening and should be ready for Juneteenth is the goal.
Wonderful.
So we're on their schedule, they're ready to go. It's obviously going to be weather dependent, but they feel very confident they can get all that done.
By Juneteenth.
Yeah, and I'm working on getting quotes from probably mostly Piscataqua for redoing the, it's like a polymer sand in between all the large stones, just to kind of clean that and redo that. They do that occasionally. And Chris Dwyer has been awesome helping me communicate with Jerome, so we're making progress on the Sankofa repairs. I don't know if you want
Perfect. Chris, do you want to just come up as the representative from Park? Yeah. With the C, not a K.
I think we have a plan. Jerome does have a template for the Sankofa. He does have some tiles. Corin has some tiles. Some tiles will have to be ordered. Corin and I went there with a tile expert and realized there are really 4 colors of different shades of orange and yellow. And there could even be more if you look at it really closely. But yes, there they are. And so we'll take those tiles. And so the plan is that Jerome will think of it as if you had like sticky paper and you were laying the tiles on upside down on a template, which would be sent up here. And then the tile expert that Corin knows, who looked at it with us on a very cold day and said, like, there were 3 different kinds of grout that he could recommend that would hold up in our weather. He's from Maine. He does work outside with tiles. And so he would then actually do the grouting. He'll clean it up, because of course it has to be redone. Clean it up, re-grout it. It takes about a day, but then it has to be protected for a little while it dries. And of course that can't be done until the weather is better. So as of this morning, we decided that we would say to Jerome, that we would go ahead with that. But we want to get really explicit written directions from the tile installer so that we're sure that he and Jerome are on the same page about what material to place it on. You've probably seen, if you had done anything like this in your house, it comes on netting sometimes, little But this, I think, would be on like a sticky surface so that it would be placed on. So ideally, it will look exactly the same.
And just to be clear, I don't have the tile person hasn't totally committed. His last text the other day with him, he said he'd be good doing it, but he's just been waiting to get the details on how the artist is going to ship the pieces. He said, once I have that locked down, I can shoot you a proposal. So
Yeah.
our intention is to try to connect Jerome and Johnny
Yeah.
so they can have a conversation. Johnny's done a lot of work in Boston, and he's had experience where the artist lays it on like a 3M sticky paper.
Yeah,
He
and
just
then
takes
transfer.
it, puts it in the space, and then he does all the, he said, quote unquote, he can make it bomb-proof. There's no reason they should ever pop
Yeah.
out for probably 10, 15.
And he'll put an epoxy
or more.
on it too. He'll put a coating on it, so.
He was very confident that
Yeah.
it won't be a problem. It's just how it all plays out with timeline, and so
Right.
we're working hard on trying to get this all nailed down. So it's not 100%, but we're getting
Yeah.
really close.
Well, I think the transfer of having it fully, outlined in the transfer of making sure that it's Jerome's piece just installed.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he's got the original template, so we know it'll fit. I mean, that's the big missing piece in a way.
Yeah,
you know.
and Jerome expressed interest in also keeping the integrity of his work, and the tile person also said he'd rather the artist does that. You know, that's what he's always done. He just gets the artist's work and he just makes sure it's put in
And lays
properly.
it,
So
yeah.
they're on the same page that way, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're getting there.
We're getting there.
It's great.
And thank you, Chris, for all your help doing this.
Well,
Thank you.
we got to wait for the finished product.
Yeah.
But this is the integral part of why bringing in Park is so good to this mission, because I don't know anyone who lays outdoor tile or material.
I think that's it. That's it for maintenance updates.
Okay. Any committee questions or anything? Okay. And now that it will be the 10th anniversary, or item 4 is their 10th anniversary of the burial grounds.
Yes. So Jerry and I wanted to talk about that. So for Juneteenth, we're thinking about hosting some sort of celebration to honor the 10th anniversary. So we want to obviously make sure that the burying ground is in good condition so we can host a few events there. Jerry, and I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to say about that.
So, hey everyone. I think the 10th anniversary kind of crept up on us, and the actual 10th anniversary is that we unveiled it on Memorial Day, right? 10 years ago. The trail has something planned for the Memorial Day. We've been working with Jerome on the augmented reality piece that we're looking at, and I'm not sure if everybody here knows about that, a project where we're doing QR codes on 3 spots, telling 3 different stories at the burying ground, and we should have that piece ready to kind of unveil the pilot program part of it, unveil around that Memorial Day weekend. And I wasn't sure if the town had thought about planning anything or what was going on, so I just thought I would ask and see what was planned and collaborate around or whatever, if there was anything planned.
So I'm not aware that there's anything planned at this moment, but I think I'm glad you brought it up so that we can have that discussion about what we might want to do in conjunction. So I'm seeing like various heads nodding. So I think we'll have some conversations, see what you're planning, and then see how anything that we've got might fit in, or how to continue to message on the events that will be occurring. Any other thoughts? I think the real piece is see how much work we can get done beforehand. It would be good, I haven't had actually an update on the sort of augmented interface there, so if you've got something, or when you have something, that would be good to, kind of give us an update of, where those QR codes would go. then let me know, and we'll make sure that if we need to coordinate with Corin or, keep the city council updated. So I don't remember. It's been a long time since.
Yeah, it's so funny though. When we started off, because we were working with Jerome on all of that, and we're still working with Jerome, but new technology has come along that we may not even need the QR codes.
Okay.
There'll be some kind of information stuff somewhere that will tell people that you can get this on your mobile phone.
Yep.
But there's a new program, the Eighth Wall, which connects to a satellite, and you get all these whatever images that we're going to put up, the way we film it, and all this 3D technology that I can't tell. But I can share that the original PowerPoint with you guys that we have on what is looking for. We'll have people will be able to pull up the unveiling event, the documents, the 1779 petition. We had some students who did the painting with Erin Barker's class, who they're now talking about, what it meant for them to work on the project and what it is now. So the AR project is in three spaces at the burying ground: the entry, the information center where we talk about the 1779 petition, and then the contemporary figures. And hopefully it will have the prototype ready by. The goal is to have it ready for May.
I have a quick, Jerry, what was the name of the program that?
Eighth Wall.
Ace Wall?
Eighth Wall.
Yeah, Eighth Wall.
Eighth Wall. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And so just making sure that we link in with Corin and his team for any installation of the signage that you're going to need.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, so during maintenance, when all of those things are getting recast and polished, and that's exciting.
Yeah, it's really a great project. It's coming along great, and the technology changes every month that you look at it. So
That is true.
it's challenges as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So maybe this is time just to raise, I know there's been a date floated for the Dinah Chase
Yes.
Whipple installation. Thinking of we've got busy timing. I think they were thinking June 9th.
9th.
Which is
Okay.
a Monday.
Okay.
So on June 19th, Juneteenth is the 19th.
Okay.
Festivities might be on the weekend.
They're coming for other things too, right? That's all right. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
It's going to be a busy couple of months.
It's going to be a busy couple of weeks at that site, huh?
Oh yes.
Yeah. It's exciting. Okay.
And I think it's really great for us here in New Hampshire to have this site where, with the stories that we can tell, and making this history visible. So I'm really proud of Portsmouth for what we've done in creating that site and having this historical entity to share stories around.
Agreed. The hope is that we can find, as you do statewide, is find some more stories and figure out ways to highlight some of the other things in the city also.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yeah. Do you just have to, we're going to break normal protocol, but if you want to come up, you just state your name for the record at one of the speakers, at one of the microphones. You can come right over here.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Just for public record, you have to,
Important. I probably missed this.
it's okay,
But,
just for public record.
Is there a formal ceremony, like a rededication planned for the African burying ground once everything is like new again?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion is if the Black Heritage Trail is launching this new kind of interactive part of the burial ground and memorial, and then we have the project finished, that can definitely be part of the celebration, whether we want to do it on the actual 10th anniversary when the Black Heritage Trail is launching, or we want to do a rededication on Juneteenth. I think that is up for discussion of a collaboration between the city and the other entities. But at this point, there's nothing scheduled for a rededication. I think part of that has to come with the conversation that is next, which is the process for further evaluating research options and possible curation of whether we want to re-enter some of the remains and explain all of those things. But at this point, there's, as we just discussed, there's no city planned formal ceremony. Okay. But it seems that it might be a great time, again, picking one of those two dates to have the city as part of the celebration. I don't necessarily know if the city needs to be fully part of both, or kind of looking to the Black Heritage Trail as that the May celebration and launching year, or whether we want to do it at our Juneteenth celebration.
What is the actual 10th anniversary?
The weekend of Memorial Day.
Memorial Day weekend, yeah.
Okay.
Just if we could tie it in with Juneteenth, that's sort of been the goal with all of the contractors, is to sort of have this ready maybe a week prior to that. So
yeah.
It might be easier that way.
And I feel like Juneteenth tends to be the day that multiple organizations get together and do a celebration in remembrance at the park. So again, we can talk about this more in depth as we go through the phases, and especially with timing. But to me, it would make sense to be Juneteenth, again, because we know that we usually have SAC in collaboration with the Black Heritage Trail and New Hope and other organizations, BLM New Hampshire, tend to do a collaborative event around that day at the park.
I remember the original ceremony being very popular.
Yeah.
There were crowds there. It was great.
Yeah, I think everything there drives a really good crowd. It's a really marker. Yes, Susan?
And I would just echo Corin's point that, May can be dodgy in terms of weather in particular, and if we're trying to get a number of items, done during the good weather, you need the right conditions to do some of that work. And certainly Juneteenth is going to give you a better target date to actually have more of that finished work done, which, would be nice. It's just the practicalities of New England. Yeah.
I assume, I haven't touched base with Sandy, but I assume that Jerry Ann and that you guys have started to plan the Juneteenth celebration?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't offline we get together and then we'll loop in SAC and as SAC is doing their 25th this year too. We'll loop in together offline and then kind of come back to the committee. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Great. Awesome. Any other conversation about the 10th anniversary?
I have another question.
Yep.
About whether the teeth would be available to put back in the ground, maybe?
So this is the next topic of on the agenda.
Okay.
And the decision has not been made. So I want, as we go through this, there's a lot of conversation of how we want to. So again, that brings us into our next item, is the process for further evaluating research options and possible curation. Suzanne has reached back out to UNH and kind of started that dialogue. So if you want to touch on that.
Sure. So UNH is certainly interested in working with the committee and the city of Portsmouth with regard to curation, but they raise the, I don't want to say question, but they want to check in and see, are we really interested in curation? Or is the community, the Black community in particular, in terms of these, few remains that are left, do you want to curate them for possible future research, or would you rather reinter them? And just making sure that there is a conversation that this committee is content with, that we feel comfortable with either decision. Now, one can always curate and, 10 years from now, say, oh, let's revisit that. Maybe we're in a different space and different views. So that's what they're looking for, is just understanding what does, this committee, as its expression, of the community, the Black community's desires on how to treat and honor the remains that have not yet been reinterred. And as we discussed at the last meeting, there are, a small number of teeth in particular that were withheld in the event that there was a desire to do further research as testing methods change and over the years. And so part of what I was hoping is that we could talk about what process you would like to come to that conclusion, because we had some of this conversation, a couple years ago about, do we do further research? If so, is it destructive testing? And we could, I guess I'd like to see, I think it would be helpful if we kind of talk about the questions that need to be answered and the process by which you want to reach those decisions, and knowing that we've got a target, say, for Juneteenth, to know, are we comfortable? Do we definitely want to curate them? Or is this the opportunity, if you didn't want to take that step, to reinter them? So that's what I'm looking for, is input on how you would like to kind of tee up those questions, and what kind of process would you like? Do you want to just invite people to the committee for a special meeting that you might hold in the evening to get public input?
I was thinking,
It's up to, so that's really it. I'm looking for how would you like to help answer those questions?
So, go ahead.
No, if
I
you
was
want
going
to
to say,
clarify something.
for me, I personally don't feel comfortable making that decision without a larger conversation within our community. I think of something in like the Levinson room at the library where we do a quick kind of park History 101, where we kind of, re-engage the public of this is the information we've learned from the prior testing. This is what we know. Here are the things we don't know. We don't know if we'll ever learn them in the future, but, here are our two options. And really trying to get more people, more residents, and just general community members from the descendant community, re-engaged in the park, but in on this conversation. I don't necessarily feel comfortable without, even 20 more people within the conversation. Sue, and then Jerry Ann.
I reached out to Amy Michael, who was on I don't know who you spoke to up at UNH about if they would take the remains.
Megan.
Oh, Megan. Oh, so I talked to Amy because I know her. I talked to Amy just specifically about if there was anything new out there. And this is just general information, that there isn't anything new as far as not deconstructive the teeth. But again, like everybody else, she said, who knows 5 years from now. But she said there were some things that could still be learned from the remains as they are now without destroying them. And she also said she would be happy to come down here and talk. She and Megan, she referred to Megan. So, but there's no new, let's send it here and DNA will tell you everything. So
Yeah. Jerry Ann?
So that's actually what I was going to ask, if we could talk to somebody if there's new technology, because the technology really is changing. And what we learned the last time, it's been a while now since we had done that research on what was available, and the technology has advanced so much more. So I think before we make a decision, it's almost like starting that process again, gathering more information, what's out there. I would love to talk with Amy again and bring that group at UNH. UNH had been notorious for not really treating remains really well. And I don't know if there's other institutions that's better than UNH, but I would love to know what UNH is doing now. You know, what is their testing stuff, but they too have come a long way since our last conversation in what they're capable of doing. So I think I agree with our chair here is it seems that we need to get more information again before we decide what to do with those remains. And I still think they have a lot more that they can tell us. That and we're not disrespecting the descendants by keeping the molars longer if we want to. I would hate to destroy them in some kind of technology and we lose whatever we could gain, because it really isn't hurting us to wait.
Any other discussion from the group?
I just have a quick question about whatever kind of reputation UNH has about their testing program. If, you know, Jerry said that they weren't known for their...
Well, I think, just not to reference UNH specifically, but I know in the email from Megan, she talks about that since COVID, museums and ethical care of remains, et cetera, have changed. So I think it wasn't just a UNH-specific issue. I think it was a general museum curation testing issue. It seems to be kind of, as referenced, nationwide, and that has changed. So I think there was concern in general, and there's been concern as if
in a negative way.
Change in a positive way.
Okay.
Yes, like the care for remains and testing are treated much more as a delicate process than maybe before. And I know museum curation around the world has.
With universities and stuff, you never know who's working on what. It's
Yeah,
always
it's an education,
a new
yeah.
group of students, a new, you know. So that was kind of one of the things that we wanted to look at. What is their long-term protocol for keeping remains? And they have implemented a lot of change to the way they do business, as a lot of other institutions across the country have. So what are those? I don't think we know all of those things yet. How they'll be traded, you know, what's the long-term ramification? Where are they going to be kept? What kind of testing, you know, that UNH, there's just so many unanswered questions at the moment. And that would be for any institution where they would be going.
And I think Jerry Ann has really kind of parsed that well, in that there are multiple questions here. You know, first, you know, are there any updates with regard to the testing, or testing available right now, destructive, non-destructive, and kind of tackling that. And then depending on what you see and hear, then the question is, well, if it's such that you might want to curate the limited remains that are not reinterred, then what is the institution? Because we are not wedded to UNH. I think certainly Dr. Howie, Megan Howie would be glad, you know, and as anyone at UNH, to answer questions about these types of concerns and how do you document and safeguard. And it doesn't have to be UNH. So maybe we kind of look at the order of the questions that we want to answer, because that's going to drive, you know, how we flow this effort. My biggest concern is that, you know, we probably had Dr. Howie and Amy Michaels, you know, to probably at least 4 or 5 committee meetings in the past.
What you say.
And so I want to make sure that however we think about framing this and teeing it up and making information available, that they're coming to one meeting where we've kind of, you know, assuming they're willing to come, find a time that works, because I want to be mindful of their investment of time and resources. The other piece is you may recall, Jerry Ann, I think you were here. We also brought in a professor from the Midwest, who I thought very eloquently talked about how to gather parts of the history and the story of these individuals outside of doing physical testing, to help round out the conversation with the community. And so it would be good to know if the community, this committee, wants that type of voice as well, in the sense of it was, from the community, just kind of looking at it from not just the, here's what science can do for you, but here's how you might want to tell the Black story here. And so I think that's why it's kind of a planning effort, and maybe it's a couple of us offline seeing if we can come up with the who, the where, how we tee up the questions, how we distribute information in advance, Jerry Ann, and get it in a format that really allows us to dive in and move the...
Have informed conversation.
Have an informed conversation, thank you. That's what I was looking for.
And I think to touch on kind of when you were just talking about telling the story more than just through DNA, it then, makes me automatically first think about the project that the Black Heritage Trail is embarking on there, which is telling the story through more than just DNA. So figuring out, with having just more conversation about what makes the most sense. And I think, again, part of that for my comfort level is trying to pull in a broader audience from the descendant and local community to have these discussions. Because I think we're going to find people on each side, and it may be that we find some middle ground of the re-entering and keeping for future testing. And there may be people who feel passionate one way or the other, and so I think we should make sure we hear them. Yes, Sue.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I reached out to Amy because I've been working with her and Alex Garcia Putnam from UNH, who work in the lab there at the Yellow Fever Project. Yes. And, we were looking, I say we, I was there the whole time, but anyway, looking for remains. So that's why I felt comfortable reaching out to Amy, because I've gotten to know her. And I actually have had a couple tours of their lab and the room where they have the remains and all that sort of stuff. So I was just curious because I've gotten to know UNH. So, but I agree. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked about everything.
Corey?
Just one practical consideration is if the remains are to be put back into the African burial ground, that was not made to be opened and closed. That's right. So all of the tile would have to come out. So we may want to, before we repair the Sankofa, we may want to come to it.
Right.
And, work before I commit or get commitment from contractors, which we're going to need to do very soon. I'm not trying to rush it. I'm just saying to consider this, is that would all have to come out. And then the whole thing would have to be redone. So that's the large tiles too. Yeah. So we don't want to get contractors committed and then say no, never mind. So just something to keep in mind when we're talking about whether we're going to put them there or another site. I just wanted to bring that up because I'd hate to see it all rebuilt and then just tear it up again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great discussion for the committee to have, because the reason why we had kept the molars out was for more study, the possibility of more studies, and not necessarily to reintern them, because we don't even know who's well, we do know which skeleton remains we got them from, but for me, I thought that we kept the molars was specifically for additional scientific research and not necessarily for reinternment without gathering more information.
Okay.
Yeah, you would be correct. That was the reason why they were originally not reinterred in the interest of science.
And I wasn't involved in the construction, but my understanding's always been that at the time, the intention was to never open it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my understanding at the
Yeah.
time as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted, my only concern about the teeth is that, that they don't stay with like a company or an organization, that they're going to be someplace safe, so if, even from 15 years from now, we know they're being taken care of properly and people know where they are and can have access to them.
Yeah. And I know when we discussed this, I think at the last meeting, or maybe the October or September meeting, we had talked about kind of setting markers to look back on. So, okay, in 5 years, you know, this future version of the committee meets to look at, to discuss and figure out what new testing is available. And then 5 years after that, you know what I mean? So it's not this kind of conversation every few years, but it's kind of a set schedule of saying, okay, you know, in 2030, the city will research what new testing DNA options are available. Okay, there's nothing of great matter. Okay, then we wait for another 5 years to kind of figure out what that. I think the part of that, though, is that we as a committee and as a community will have to set the threshold of what we feel like is enough new technology or new results that could be received from some type of testing.
Has anybody ever reached out to other African burial sites in the United States to see what they're doing with things like this? Or is there a society that exists that is, you know, based around these issues? Or an organization? Is anybody aware of anything like that?
Originally, yes.
I thought this committee had talked with folks from New York way back when.
Yeah.
What they did, and we spoke with the and I cannot remember the institution that did the testing on the remains in New York. I just don't remember the doctor's name.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But I thought we had done some outreach to other places.
But it's not a bad idea to maybe, I mean, I can put my typing cap on and maybe it's time to, you know, research. We know that more cities throughout at least the East Coast have acknowledged these sites, you know, since the 10 years of the original formation of the committee. So that can be something I can look into and see if I can find anything else. Maybe some of the newer sites, and I know there's some newer sites in Virginia that have been brought up, and so maybe it's that. So I'll look into that and see if we can find any, if I can find any information on any other burial sites in parks, and then what
Or
other.
a university that's dedicated
Dedicated.
something to this particular
Yeah.
issue, the research department that's maybe specifically handling remains of this type.
Yeah. I'll do some research.
I have some materials somewhere in a folder because I've been keeping track and people send me stuff from time to time.
Yeah.
So I can pull that and
The boxes.
and, yeah, we can. I know. Actually, it's not in a box. I have a rough idea where that folder is.
We can collaborate on that and try to reach out to other. But I think that's a great reminder and idea to do, is reach out to others and collab. Okay,
I do
so
wonder, unfortunately, this is Jill Munity, but I'm sorry I'm not there.
it's okay, Jill. Go ahead.
However, I do wonder if anyone reached out to the Smithsonian in DC, the National Black Historian History Museum. I would think there would be someone there we could connect with also, who might be able to give us some directive on which way to go. And it's also my understanding that there are only 2 African national, I believe, burial sites, ours as well as New York. So we're kind of limited as to which direction to go. I know people are trying to get acclamation of getting it, identify what they have maybe in their area, but those are the only 2 that I know of right now.
Okay.
So I do wonder about reaching out to the Smithsonian in DC
Yeah.
and see what they can recommend or suggest.
We had some contacts with, maybe so long ago. Maybe it wasn't with the newest Smithsonian institution, because they have
Yeah.
pieces. Because I know we had some contact with the Smithsonian 4 years ago now, right? About that, Chris?
Well, it was a while ago. It was the person who was doing research on food.
Yes,
and
that's it.
ways.
Yep. Yep, so it was, they reached out to us for a very specific purpose, not for curation, but an interest in testing.
Okay. We'll look into that, Jill. Thank you for that. Okay, if there's no other further discussion on that topic besides the marching orders of trying to get some research, formulating some questions, Suzanne and I can get together and try to formulate questions that we would ask for anyone or any organization or university that would hold on to the remains kind of long term.
Can I also ask, since at least I heard that there was a preference to kind of think about a public meeting at which we could tee up some of these questions and get as much input as we can. Is there a preference for timing on that? I'm just thinking of scheduling rooms and looking ahead, just so that as we back into what we'd like to achieve, are we kind of thinking April-ish, we might be ready? I'm thinking if we work on a schedule of when we'd like to get input,
Yeah.
or is it March? I'm just trying to get enough so that we can keep moving forward here.
I would think if March, because that kind of puts us under a little bit of a gun to reach out to the Smithsonian, some other organizations to try to find what other people are doing. It gives us a little bit of time to maybe discuss, with UNH kind of some of their questions, our questions, and then formulate at least some, again, information for us to share with the public and get public feedback on it.
Okay.
Does that feel doable for people, for any type of input that people want to be part of
The
it?
latest, yeah, I mean, we would need to know whether we're going to,
Well, let me ask this, though. Given what we heard from Corin, who reminded me, thank you.
Sounds like reentry is not, was not the
that
purpose.
site, it may not be the best option.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think then that is okay.
So then we can just, schedule at a time that actually works for this committee and the community, knowing that we just give Corin the go-ahead to keep rocking,
Yeah.
get the Sankofa top finished, fixed,
Try to
prepared.
get it finished, yeah.
Try, I know.
I'm not making any promises.
We'll make our best effort.
I don't know if you heard of God's Little Acre in Newport, Rhode Island.
No.
It's a colonial African burial site,
Oh,
and they seem to have quite a bit of knowledge. You
God's
might
Little-
want to think about reaching out to that organization
Organization.
too.
Yeah, they have not though excavated any of the remains. That's an intact
Yes.
Yeah.
African burying ground.
Okay.
And it's later than ours.
Okay.
interesting. Okay, so then it may be what I think we should try to do this is going to be a pain, is find some of the minutes from the original meetings where it was discussed of keeping those remains out and voted on, so that there's something to look back at if it kind of gets
To tell
discussed.
the story of
Yeah.
how we arrived
Correct.
at where we are now. Let me see, now that I'm thinking March, April, maybe if I look at talk to the library about when the Levinson room might be available, because they tend to book up
Pretty quick.
fairly quickly, which is why I was trying to get a sense of timing to have a conversation because of,
Well, and it may be a good way, again, to, like I said, reiterate interest as we're going into the May celebration with the Black Heritage Trail and Juneteenth. So it's, if we schedule it in the April time period, we're kind of kicking off the
Conversation.
the conversation in the 10-year anniversary celebrations that will happen over the next few months. So we can talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we hope to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
wanted to add that as long as the remains are treated well and with dignity, in some African tradition, if someone dies abroad and the loved one's body isn't able to be sent home, there's a tradition of maybe cutting some of their fingernails and some of their hair to be sent home for funeral rites. So not burying the remains may not be seen as desecrating those remains as long as it's treated with dignity. And there is a tradition of taking something of that person, of their body, to send back home. So I don't know if that will help with that argument.
With the context and the.
So can I mention something on that? There was a time we were thinking and working to bring some of the Queen Mothers from Ghana here. And what the Queen Mothers had wanted to do, not necessarily the remains, because we had spoken to them about having the molars, but what they wanted to do was to take some of the dirt from the burying site, from our grave site, which is anybody's backyard at this moment, and take that home symbolically, taking it back. So it wasn't particularly the remains, more than connecting the earth where the ancestors are to the earth of where they came from. And that was what the Queen Mothers had, in a ceremony, wanted to do when we brought them here. And that's definitely something, we can do at any time, in anybody's backyard and do that.
Yeah.
So,
I think
around the Port Street area, really.
I think basically, as long as there is that connection and there's that sort of return home, that's important, and that's what sometimes we do for family members who die abroad, to bring something of them home so that they know how to get back home.
Okay.
Well, it's just always important to remain sensitive to these varying cultural expectations. I know that to date, that's been of utmost concern. There's no reason to cease doing that, and you'll bring another tradition to my mind, of which I'm not aware, and I'm sure there are other cultural traditions. It's just good to have this information, and I'd love to hear more about the specificity of this cultural expectation, like whose culture is it, what tradition is it that you're speaking from, because it's important to be correct.
It's important to be
and it's always important to be respectful. I think we've been successfully respectful, but to be correct is another level of respect.
Yeah. So I'm coming mainly from the certain tribes or clans in Ghana, so the Gars and the Eres, and some parts of the Akan.
Thank you. Yes, Sue?
Well, maybe you're going to say this. I'm confused at this point. With what Suzanne, booking a room, are we saying that we're not going to re-intern? I'm lost in the conversation.
It seems like, yes, because we hopped around, because I did not fully, as someone new to this process, understand kind of the discussion and votes that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that the committee voted 10 years ago that in the design of it, that the remains that were left out for testing would not be re-entered.
Right.
So really, for me, the idea of a public meeting in kind of at the library is to share with what has been done, what we hope to do, get feedback from people of. We don't know what people in our community members know. You know what I mean? Like someone could be like, "Hey, actually, my cousin is a specialist in X, Y, and Z in Michigan. But also, again, to re-spark the engagement of the public as we're going through this refresh process as the Black Heritage Trail. So it's kind of morphed. My idea has morphed from just like getting public opinion to getting public opinion and sharing broader information about the park.
Educating the community.
Yeah, and getting, again, the community re-engaged into, hopefully celebrating the next 10 years of the park. And again, in my world, kicking off, as we talk about, has the city planned anything? This, in some way, is the city planning some community re-engagement of the park. But this is why I asked Suzanne to try to find the minutes, because I think it's, to me, a respect to the former committee members and the founding committee members, that if this was set out to never be re-entered, and the Secaucus designed that way, then I think that we need to honor that also. Yes, Chris?
Just a clarification, it was a meeting of the descendants.
Descendants, yes.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
Not specifically
The committee,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, give me 1 second. We broke protocol because normally public comment is at the very end.
Okay.
So Chris is an ad hoc member representing the Parks Committee. So it's like,
So I think that when we talk about gathering, hopefully in April, to go over the history and gin up the renewed excitement about this opportunity, really, to tell the history again. I think it would be helpful to get from the community, thinking of the questions we'd like input on, or to kind of hear destructive testing versus non-destructive, because that is something that the prior committee wrestled with as they looked at the options, and just to understand, and feel comfortable with the decision, well, we won't do anything right now other than say X, Y, and Z, because we don't want to destroy, the opportunity to study more later.
Yeah.
And I think it would be good to have that, because it does mean maybe you wait, because what you're going to get now from some testing opportunities are going to tell you this much maybe, instead of if you destroyed as part of the testing, you get more information potentially, but then that opportunity may be gone unless the fragments, the technology changes and you get more opportunities. So I think it would be good to understand kind of what the preference and tolerance level of the descendant community is for different levels of testing. And then, as we talked about, the sensitivity of where the remains are curated, I think it would be good to kind of get that, if there are concerns within the community about how they're cared for and where they're cared for over the long term, then that is going to give us an opportunity to kind of take that in and respond to that, and kind of, yes, we're looking for a path that's going to ensure the respect and honoring the traditions that are important, and setting the boundaries on who has approval to do anything with those remains. So it's kind of my thinking.
okay. Does that sound like we?
Sounds like a good program.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Because this is my first time around. What's the definition, or what at the time, to form the descendants group or committee? How was that sort of laid out, and who was? I mean, because we don't have one for the whole state, do we? With the Black Heritage, some like descendants communities meet and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about.
No, we don't. There's no like official or unofficial, my understanding, full descendant organization in New Hampshire.
That's correct. The committee members reached out, invited comment and input from what I'd call the greater Seacoast, the local Black community.
Yeah, and I think that's what we would do
Yeah.
for this, is re-engage the Black descendant, because to be honest, as a kid who grew up here, you know what I mean, up until 8 years ago, I didn't really understand the significance, and I think that there are plenty of newer residents in the descendant community that I think this is a good time to pull people back in and to expand their reach. We're a very small group of the descendant community in New Hampshire, and I think through our connections we can bring more people in and hopefully have a larger impact on kind of choice.
Just even to talk about descendant community is to invite a whole complex of other questions. Like I've only lived in New Hampshire for some number of years, not the entirety of my life by any stretch of the imagination. I may have no chromosomal relationship to these people, but I still feel like I'm a part of their descendant community. And I just say that not to try to complicate things even more, but just to underscore the importance of having broad community engagement and exposure, even to the opportunity to discuss these things. So I'm just supportive of a community forum. I think the Levinson Room in the library is a perfect place for it. Certainly is well used. The Black Heritage Trail with the Tea Talks pretty much puts it solid and is always full. But I think that Portsmouth is in a wonderful position as a community to really look into questions and support this type of activity. It's just good because people in Portsmouth have been working at this for a while, and this is not new. This is an ongoing conversation. I just want to commend the citizens and the stakeholders in Portsmouth because this is another good step towards broadening the definition of who makes up Portsmouth and who makes up New Hampshire, and by extension, who even makes up our nation.
Thank you, Reverend. Okay. So we will follow up with that.
You and I can maybe work to put together a tentative schedule, questions, kind of outline that we could bring to the next committee meeting here to get input, and then
if there's any questions or anything that you want to make sure it filters down, feel free to send that to Suzanne or myself, and we'll make sure that question in some version, maybe one that has already been thought of, but in some version gets on this list for the committee to view. So I'm going to move on to our next item, which is the revisiting a new or updated mission statement. Does everyone have a copy? Do you need a copy?
Dee, you came in later. Anyone else? Yep, here. I got an extra copy.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's a new one.
If you have an extra copy,
yep.
I'll take it.
So what I did, and my apologies for the Zoom land people, we can read off if you want. So I went back and listened to the committee discussion after the last meeting where we had reviewed an earlier draft of this. And what I noodled over in particular, 2 items. First, whether to leave in the reference to Indigenous or not. Because we'd had Sue brought up that there is a whole different statutory scheme, not that different, for Indigenous peoples. And I kind of noodled that over because originally I liked the idea of, we'd have something already standing to help in this conversation. But then as I was mulling things over, trying to figure out what draft to bring to you, I thought, it might be, at least for now, cleaner and simpler to kind of focus on step 1. Now, it is your mission, so consequently, whatever this committee decides to do, I'm more than happy to do. But as I was, like I said, noodling it over, I thought, well, maybe we take that out and not complicate it because of the different statutory schemes. But I'm not fixed in that. So that was one change that could easily go back. It was just a thought. I did hear a question of whether to add African and Black peoples. That I don't have a I just took what I kind of heard and tried to put something in here that you guys could respond to. And then I changed where we have enslaved and we had freed, and we decided, or we had the discussion, well, should it be freed or free or both? And then as I was looking at definitions and thinking logically about it, I thought free actually encompasses freed as well. So I was inclined to just leave it enslaved and free because it encompassed both. But I'm not, again, I'm not fixed on any of this. This is just language to try and help the committee out. And the other piece I did is I added a sentence at the end, and we can read the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll read the whole thing so everyone on Zoom and the public can know. It says, the committee is dedicated to preserving and honoring the final resting places of African and Black peoples, enslaved and free. We strive to safeguard these sacred sites through respectful stewardship, community engagement, and education initiatives. Our mission is to ensure that these hallowed grounds are protected for future generations, recognizing the profound historical and cultural significance. The committee anticipates close coordination and support from the city's Department of Public Works, the Public Art Review Committee, and the Cemetery Committee in light of the resources, expertise, and overlap in interests in maintaining and preserving and honoring the sites and the artistic and cultural elements within them. Sue?
Since we have other African Americans buried in our other cemeteries, the first thought that came to me was the committee is dedicated to preserving and honoring the African burial ground, and that would cover any, free, not free, whether you came from Africa or the West Indies. That just sort of encompasses that whole, to me.
Yeah. So my only point for that is that we know of at least one other site in the community that we're talking about, figuring out. So I think the conversation, if I'm recalling it, was not limiting it just to that site because of any future sites and potential work with Portsmouth Housing Authority for the other site found over behind the church. And so growing, potentially having more than one site.
Well, no, I understand that. It's just, I always feel like those that are buried in North Cemetery are always left out of this loop, and that there are other places, too, that there may be African Americans buried in some of our historical cemeteries. And I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
No, I get what you're saying.
I think that's why I added the specific sentence at the end, which means there's a natural overlapping and coordination that would happen because, there are, what we're doing with Dinah Chase Whipple. Obviously, the resting place is, North Cemetery. But obviously, this committee, to the extent the descendant community is excited about the fact that we're getting to honor this, I think there's a synergy, and that's okay.
I think I just have to reformat my brain thinking just this specific area as opposed to all our historic cemeteries. I think that's what's influencing me. So this is specifically for the African, well, I mean, not the statement, but that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe it down the road, there's a more overlap of our committee and the cemetery committee if we know there are certain historical or non, quote unquote, significantly just average freed or enslaved or formerly enslaved peoples buried at sites. Obviously, we know of a few, more prominent historical figures in different cemeteries, but maybe, throughout the path of the synergies of the two committees, there are some type of markers or plaques at some of the other cemeteries that also note some historical African Americans buried at those. But what was that?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I was talking to myself. I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
It's just, I talk out loud, and I apologize. My concern is that there are a lot of historical grave sites that we have not recognized. And my thing is that you're talking about maybe having a certain plaque so that they can be recognized as part of this group? Or
It's just a random off the top of the head conversation of the synergies of the fact that we say the final resting places of, if there's an initiative that wants to be taken by this committee in conjunction with the cemetery committee, that is something that can be discussed at another meeting and kind of, figuring out that we know that this is not the only resting place of African and Blacks in Portsmouth in our community.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can I just say one thing too? In the early part, when we were defining the community, can we say people of African descent, free, enslaved, and formerly enslaved, or free and formerly enslaved, or something like that? But I think people of African descent just encompasses all of them, whether they're African or African Americans or Black, or it's just helping define it. They're people of African descent.
Okay, so let me make sure I've got it. So you're proposing add the word descent after the word African.
Yeah, people of African descent, yes. Whether we say free, enslaved, or formerly enslaved. I think this is one of the things a lot of scholars are trying to get away from, those binaries of black and white.
Yep.
And mostly places of origin. And I think it encompasses, it's just one of those things that the scholars are trying to get to.
I think African descent is also a really good way because as time goes by, with generations that come, they may not all present as Black, but they are African descent. And some people begin to recognize that, even if they present as white. So that could be a good way.
And then you said also adding enslaved, formerly enslaved, and free. And to me, that those are very important in this, because we know that some people were born free, some people were formerly enslaved.
Got it?
Okay. Is there any other adjustments that we would like to see?
I just
Yes.
want to confirm I'm reading it correctly. The committee is dedicated to preserving and honoring the final resting places of people of African descent.
Yeah, we'll send around an updated copy that will be what we would vote on at the next meeting. But yes, you have that
That's
correct.
what I
Enslaved,
wrote
formerly
down.
enslaved, and free.
It's exactly what I put down too.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Good, I can bring a clean version for the next meeting and
we'll vote on it.
see if there's any other comments, so.
Okay. Any other discussion on the adjustment of the mission statement? Okay. Seeing none, I would move on to other business if there is any. Sue? Yeah, Sue? Put them up. Put it up, Sue.
Well, no, I read the minutes, or reviewed them earlier, and I was supposed to check into this library and see, I think you had mentioned,
The maps.
not the map, someone 2 or 3 years ago came and gave a presentation about African-American burying ground, and if that might be relative or something we could use. Well, I checked into it. The woman that did it, it's on an African and Indian Native American burial ground that was found, that was part of the 16 1800s, like 1640. So it's not relevant to
this.
what's going on here. And they're doing all kinds of archaeology research and things like that. I mean, I can look into it more, but it doesn't sound like they're dealing just with an African burial ground.
Okay.
And there was no other, Katie couldn't remember any other, and I'm on their committee for genealogy, and we have like 5 pages, and there was nothing else about burial grounds
Okay.
over the years.
All right. Any other business? If not, we'll go back to the formality of public comment. So come on up. And just make sure you state your name for the record, please.
My name's John, and I live on Lincoln Avenue.
Thanks, John.
And the question I had is whether it might be a good exercise for everyone to review the video of the original ceremony before we make any kind of presentation to the public about what it might be like to have one. And I'd be curious about how the original remains were physically reinterred. What was the process? My memory's not that good of it. I was there, but I don't remember exactly how they did it, how it was closed up in the end. And
We had
anyway, that would be revealed in a YouTube video.
Yeah, I think Kathleen, we can definitely recommend for the public in this committee to rewatch that, but I think Kathleen Wheeler shared a lot at the last couple meetings. She was, I think, the head archaeologist, correct? About how they'd re-entered the remains and
With the box.
and with the box
I
and
watched it. Yeah, I was there watching
Yeah.
it. I thought reviewing the tape, but just to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
And if people wanted to have another memorial ceremony, a rededication, it might actually sort of stimulate some ideas for that.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else, John? You look like you have one more
No,
thing.
well, there was just one other thing about the tiles. Am I right that you're going to try to reuse some of the old ones or not?
No.
Yeah, possibly. The ones that are still intact and are
Clean, yeah.
reach the color value that Jerome finds suitable. Like when he gets them, if he doesn't like them, he can get rid of them. But if he wants to reuse them, he can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
That was the intention.
I don't know if they.
So you're ordering some new ones, though? right?
Potentially, because he still has some, from my understanding. So when he gets it all, he'll determine whether he needs to buy more.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so you're using the same material.
Same material.
Keeping your fingers crossed. There's
The tile expert that I talked to, he seemed literally was sort of baffled as to why it
didn't
wasn't
work?
done right the first time. He used the words bomb-proof, that he can make it extremely durable.
More of an installation problem versus an actual product problem.
Yeah, I noticed that many of them were cracked, though.
Yep, some have cracked over time.
Yeah,
So
not just popped out, but cracked.
yeah,
I think that probably happened after they
I
started
agree.
popping that
yes, they
weight
pop
of
and
it,
then they
yeah.
get stepped on or they crack, from that.
ice.
But also the epoxy and the expert of the installation will.
Right.
Right now, there's no epoxy level protection on them, so
Right,
they're
right.
just.
And he hasn't given us the specifications yet. He'll specify what he'll be using when I get a quote from him.
Right, in terms of the mastic or the...
Yeah, whatever he's going to use,
masonry.
he will write down the materials he's going to use.
Right, so he'll have a handful of those plastic tiles or whatever they are, and
He doesn't
he'll
even
say...
need them. He's already seen them. He doesn't need
Oh,
a
okay.
handful. Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
He's been there. He's
Okay.
touched it and seen it, and
And they're not plastic, correct?
No, they're not
No.
plastic, and
Were they glass or something, or? They,
I actually don't know what material they are.
they're ceramic.
I think they're ceramic. Yeah.
Yeah, ceramic, yeah. But
okay. I don't know.
But they know, his mind just went out of the artist, Jerome.
Jerome.
He has all this information so that he'll order the tiles that he wants to.
Right.
And I went to an expert too and talked to Corin, and the guy that he found that made more sense, reaffirmed everything we found out the first time around, that it wasn't the tiles, it was the installation of everything, and that wasn't a particularly hard job.
Okay. My fingers crossed.
Aren't we all, John? Aren't we all? Okay, with nothing
Do you want to
else.
set another
Yes,
date for the
yes,
meeting?
Yes. Does the last, well, yeah,
We were doing the third Mondays, but,
yes, but that's presidents, so we
oh,
would,
right.
so then
Those
we would look
holidays.
to the 24th of February would be the last Monday.
That's school vacation week. I
Week.
don't know if anyone cares in this group, but I always figured I should flag it.
Or if the committee, I don't know what everyone's schedule, I know we've been going with the third, but, because the third is then in March, and so we could March 3rd before the city council meeting, if that feels more within like the normal 4 to 5 weeks, or,
Isn't the 17th? Are you guys having a meeting then too?
that's President's Day, so no. Our meeting is moved to Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So we could do school vacation week or the Monday following.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not an issue for people, don't feel like you can't do it on the 24th.
I don't know if
always am
kids-
mindful.
Not an
I
issue for
know.
me.
I have kiddos, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we move it to the 18th, like the city council does?
So the Tuesday, that kind of change it, is that okay with everyone? I'd look to those on Zoom, would the 18th be, and we can try to have as much information, not sure how much we'll be able to pull together in 2.5-ish weeks, but we'll try.
I won't be here, but that doesn't mean I can't fully prep someone.
1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah.
I would say,
Yeah, no, you're right.
my preference is if Suzanne could not be here, to schedule it on the 24th or the 3rd. I think it,
I could possibly be here by Zoom, though, because I'm
Okay.
working, my daughter's having
That's okay.
surgery, so I'm taking care of her. But I could
The
Zoom
third,
in.
It sounds like.
yeah,
that would be
what,
better for
does
everybody.
the 3rd work for everyone on Zoom?
Yep.
Okay, so we will.
So
we will-
March 3rd at 4.
March 3rd at 4 p.m. is what we will go with officially for our next meeting. And look at us, we are 10 minutes ahead of schedule. I love it. Okay, if there's no other comment, I would look for a motion and a second to adjourn. Or actually, I don't need that for a committee meeting, right?
You don't, but
We'll take it.
Okay.
Anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
First?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much, everyone.